So, our guest today here on the Four Doctors Forum here at Concierge Medicine Today and the Docpreneur Leadership Podcast and Broadcast is Dr. Christopher Liu. He is an MD and a PhD, and we're going to talk to him in a three-part series. This is the first part. We're going to talk to him first today about the transitioning of transitioning your physician medical career into something other than clinical practice. How does a physician who's kind of burned out, maybe this just isn't for me. I think I want to keep my medical degree. Maybe I want to stay a little bit with one foot in the clinical area, but I have interests. I have these inclinations, these entrepreneurial ideas that I want to do something else. I have expertise that I think lends itself better in other areas, but I still want to keep my one foot in the door of clinical practice. So, Dr. Christopher Liu, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Good morning, and thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are from Houston, Texas. So before we jump into the topic today, let's talk a little bit about why you have 2 degrees, because that's a feat in itself, as many of our listeners and physicians and listeners and watchers know. But talk to us a little bit about what drew you into medicine, first of all, and then what drew you into the other areas of expertise found in your studies.
Yeah, definitely. So, I grew up on the cusp of Gen X and millennials, and from an early age, I've always been an entrepreneur. So, since the age of 11, I've honed that instinct into a skill set ever since. Nevertheless, back in the when I was growing up, it was standard practice for one to pursue a profession such as medicine, law, business, or finance, because that led to the stable job, lifestyle, family, etc. So I followed that path for a long time. My main motivation for going into medicine was because my mom passed away due to breast cancer when I was 11 years old. So that had a significant impact on me growing up. Had to really fend for myself, and a lot of times I use that entrepreneurial instinct as a means of survival. So I went to Rice. Got into Baylor for medical school. Was part of the MD PhD program, and the impetus for the MD PhD was to take clinical questions and ideas and bring them into the lab so that you could develop solutions, either new diagnoses, therapies, novel ways of interacting and treating with patients so that you could make an impact on the healthcare system. As we all know, the healthcare system today is quite bureaucratic, quite broken, highly regulated. So, in theory, an MD PhD helps, but in practice, usually physicians go into either clinical practice or they do basic science research. So, go ahead.
No, I was just continue with your thoughts. I'm just processing. A lot of doctors, especially young physicians in their 30s and early 40s, have. I do see more entrepreneurial concepts and ideas flowing out of them. But the idea of if I build it, they will come. Concept is it goes by pretty quick, and it's a hard learning curve for a lot of young physicians to learn. What's maybe some of your insights or advice that you've learned as in working with younger physicians in that demographic that have these ideas, but they think I'm gonna help people, and obviously that's the heartbeat of every physician and healthcare provider starting out, but then they quickly learn within a year or two, there's bureaucracy, there's reimbursements, there's promises broken, there's burnout. I didn't sign up for this. What's some of your advice for the younger physicians out there who are kind of struggling with that?
Yeah, it's a really complex and very difficult question because there's so many different factors. We have at the heart of it is just the system is just completely broken, and it's really hard because I know several startup companies try to address these insurance and issues, but a lot of them just end up uh, closing doors because it's just so hard to get into. So my advice to younger generation is, well, one, I think I wouldn't trade a second of my medical degree. My time at Baylor and Rice were the best 7 years of my life. It's just that if you come in with these idealized notions and you want to save or change the world, it's going to be very difficult, because what the system wants you to do is just see patients, do procedures, bill more, do diagnose and treat more. So they're not really asking you to save the world or change the face of medicine. They just want you to fit in the system and work within it. So there's a couple ways. A lot of physicians, you can become an entrepreneurs, which means that you can innovate within an organization, within a company. A lot of people go into academia for this reason, because they can do a lot of research, clinical research. They can um, impact the institution. So that's one way, is to become an entrepreneur. The other way is, like I said, I honed the entrepreneurial skill set since an early age. So what you can do is you can do various side projects based on your ideas. And these days, the barriers to entry to doing those types of projects are much lower, and the potential reward is much higher. So that's another way. But like I said, I wish I had known this going into medical school, that we all come with these preconceived idealized notions, and but the reality is a much different.
Wow. So let's move on to our next question, which is, who is leaving? And we'll compartmentalize some of these topics in our questions. Who is leaving, and then we already know why they're leaving. That's a question that's been. I mean, you don't have to go down a rabbit trail very long on a blog or on LinkedIn to find out why doctors are frustrated. That's obvious. But who is leaving? And break up some of those demographics for us. Is it a lot of male physicians? Is it a lot of female physicians? Is it younger? And then is it just physicians, or do we also see nurse practitioners, PAs, RNs? We know that they're overworked as well.
I think, well, what I've seen, for example, a lot of the physicians from the baby boomer generation who really enjoyed a fruitful medical career during the 90s and early part of 2000. A lot of them are starting to retire, just because they've put in their time. A lot of them wish they could extend their careers, but I've been a consultant to several hospitals, and I've seen just the frustration with the baby boomer generation with the electronic health records. So a lot of them just are retiring, rightfully so. That's one segment. This other segment that's quite alarming is the younger cohort, the early career physicians, a couple years out, 5 to 10 years out. That's the one where we're seeing a lot of mass exodus, and that's concerning in a couple of respects, because first is that as our population increases and ages, we're going to need a significant number of physicians to help treat their chronic health issues, their acute health issues. But the sad fact is that there's a predicted physician shortage in the coming decade. So that's quite alarming. In terms of male and female, I don't really think there's a predilection for one or the other. But what we're seeing is a lot of inequality. We're also seeing a lot of mental health issues, a lot of suicide as well, and this has a great effect and impact on physicians' families, such as divorce, quality of life, and that sort of thing.
Wow. Well, let's pivot over to that topic quickly and talk a little bit about the inequality side of this. The social media environment is, in the last couple of years, we see it kind of go in spurts where we had a lot of things happen last year within the social media physician and healthcare provider community. where doctors were not supporting, a higher up doctor, and doctors were showing their support. And I think, there wasn't enough PPP and all these types of things. And, so what is being done in the inequality within healthcare from, is it starting on an academic level within medical institutions where we're starting to, do something about it? Or is it something where medical associations are getting involved? And how do doctors, I think that's another question too, how do healthcare providers of all different specialties and types, as well as physicians, how do they get involved to help with the inequality issues? Because I don't know if raise awareness, because there's a lot of awareness about it already, but
Mhm.
what can they do? What are some handlebars that they can grab onto um, while they're in medicine, while they're exiting their career in medicine and trying something else? Being a superstar in your own backyard and having your voice heard in your local backyard community is a great handle. What's some of the things that you're seeing out there as you work with doctors and others?
Well, I see a lot of, like you said, a lot of awareness about the issue, and there's no one great solution. But a lot of times, a lot of during the COVID pandemic, when there was a lot of studies done, a lot of grassroots awareness, a lot of publications in medical journals about various issues. So, one of the biggest issues from last year was just the inequality in terms of the hospitals and institutions needing providers, but they didn't have the resources to either pay them or protect them, for in terms of the PPE. So, and a lot of this early on, for example, when physicians and nurses spoke up, it made national news when their contracts were terminated for speaking up against the system. I think the backlash was that a lot of the legal side got involved. So once the legal side gets involved, then hospitals are bound to change. And what's going to happen is new rules, regulations, bureaucracies, more additional paperwork, red tape, and that sort of thing gets introduced.
Mm.
So that's one thing. But like I said, it's a lot of physicians are starting to speak up against this. A lot of, if you go on the social media, that's why in terms of my own practice, what I advocate is having backup streams of income so that in case your clinical income gets reduced or you get furloughed or replaced or whatever, it has no effect or bearing on your quality of life because you have investments from real estate or stocks, or different businesses and that sort of thing. So a lot of physicians are starting to heed the wake up call and starting to take action. Ultimately, we, the medical associations, the licensing boards, politicians, that sort of thing. But like I said, all it's the whole political and institutional bureaucracy process takes, sometimes years to make a change.
It is a titanic feat, and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
steering the Titanic, right?
Exactly.
So let's talk a bit about what you do with specificity, and let's talk about what the options are for transitioning out of medicine. But again, I have talked with a number of doctors over the years, and it's, hey, I remember one doc, he said, I worked really hard for this, and it took me a long time. So yeah, I'm like 70, I'm in my mid 70s, and I'm not letting go of my medical degree just yet. So they
Uh-huh.
continue to take the re-up, the exams and so on to keep up, because they don't want to let it go. They might not practice inside of the exam rooms anymore, but it is something that they cherish, and that's great, because like we're seeing with the pandemic, where states are coming back and saying, hey, we're going to relax some things, some rules, so that you can come and help with give vaccinations.
Uh-huh.
So that's great that, some of those who have their medical degree but aren't practicing in clinical, have some options out there. So what are those pathways? If I'm at the fork in the road and it's got four prongs like a fork, what are some of those ways that I can earn additional income as a physician that are stable, that, is what requires sweat equity. There's no easy road, as we know. There's no such thing as easy money, like our dads and moms will always tell us.
Uh, there's for a physician, there's a number of different pathways. So the beauty of a medical degree is that it gives you a brand and a platform to step on, because you've already qualified yourself in terms of academics, integrity, helping others. So there's a plethora. So one thing that I recommend for physicians, the easiest way is through consulting. So being a consultant, and being a consultant is a very broad and general thing. So you could work for Accenture, Deloitte, McKinsey, any of those big consulting companies. You could also be an independent consultant, so you can be independent medical exam. You can do IMEs. You could do disability insurance reviews. You can do file reviews. The possibilities are endless, because there are so many different niches in terms of what's needed in the healthcare profession for physicians. Healthcare IT is a burgeoning field, with the electronic health record, and now with data analytics, artificial intelligence, blockchain. Recently telemedicine is actually gotten a lot of steam, because with everything have to being virtual, so you can become a telemedicine virtual consultant as well. So I know a lot of physicians are taking on extra hours and extra patients from their home offices to supplement that income. Yeah. So like, I host a monthly mastermind, discussing the various ways of getting into consulting as well. Other than that, you can be an investor. So investing in equities, real estate, commercial real estate, syndicates as well. So there's a lot of physician investors that take who leverage their time and their money for more capital gains as well. So like I said, really being a physician brands you as an authority figure. You can also do public speaking, you can do writing, you can create digital products, you can be a social media influencer, a niche influencer. So the possibilities are really endless.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about one of those, which is, an interesting and I think intriguing one for a lot of physicians, and that is the real estate side of this. They have that, uh, you know, but the lack of expertise, I think, is what's, something that, like, in my area, you're in Houston, I'm in Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
If we were to talk with a physician in Florida or, Nebraska, I'd be like, well, I'm interested, but how much of this is going to require my time? What should I
Uh-huh.
put my money into?
Uh-huh.
Should it be with a partner, another colleague? Because that could go south. Maybe we disagree. He or she, they want to pull out in a couple of years, and then I'm left with the ticket. Um, so let's talk a little bit about how you find expertise in this, and
Uh-huh.
what's your role in that?
Yeah. Well, I started real estate investing back in 99. And that's when they say that real estate is the best time to get in is, when it's on the best day was yesterday, the best day is today. So, and really, I advocate for physicians to just start with a basic single family home, a starter home, a fixer upper, nothing too expensive, nothing too risky, and learn the ins and outs from there. So there's, with owning and investing in a single family, there's a lot of things, including property taxes, maintenance, expenses. You have to market for your tenants. You have to get it filled. You have to deal with, non-paying. You have to deal with liabilities, insurance, and that sort of thing. So the best way is to get a starter home, and then just from there, learn the ins and outs. With physicians in particular, because their time is so valuable and so limited. So one way is, I know a lot of physician spouses. So the spouse manages it, and so they work as a team. So couple teams. Once you have a good handle or grasp on real estate, so you can either scale up from there, you can continue. It's like a cookie cutter approach. You can purchase additional single family homes. You can scale up to multifamily, or you can scale up to commercial or apartments. So that's going to take a little bit more capital and time. So in order to leverage that capital and time, you either partner up with another investor, or you join a syndicate. So a syndicate is essentially a pool of investors, there's a single sponsor that pulls the money together to invest in a larger deal. So that's a great way to leverage a physician's time and money. But the thing is, you don't just throw your money away to any sponsor. It takes a lot of skill in terms of vetting the sponsor, understanding the sponsor, working relationship. You also have to have a good knowledge of how to invest in different types of more advanced properties, including apartments, multifamilies, and that sort of thing. So if a physician can get knowledgeable about what the potential risks are, and they have a good working relationship with the sponsor, that's a great way to leverage their time and their money. So there's a lot of different ways to make money in real estate, either through just, sweat equity, or through leveraging other people's time, money, and efforts.
And so my next question is kind of statement to prove, and then your solution. So when we ask physicians over the years, how many in your medical degree, medical study, how many business courses did you take? How many credit hours did you get? The answer usually comes back as, I took maybe 2 or 3 courses, maybe 5 credit hours out of hundreds of credit hours. And then when we back that up, okay, we'll put a pin in it. Where do you go to get business advice? Where do you go to get financial advice? Oh, I go to other clinicians, right? And that's what always the answer seems to be. And then you combine those two, Post-it notes together, and you're like, so you do realize they got the same credit hours that you got. It just might be that their life experience is 8 years more than you, but it's not to say that their business or real estate or financial or consulting expertise is any more better or worse than yours. So where do you fit in? What advice do you have for physicians where to go to learn about some of these things? Where do they start? How can you help as well?
Yeah. Well, the one book, and it'll cost less than any course or coaching or whatever, is read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think it's free now. You can probably find it for free. And it'll just basically open your eyes towards basic financial literacy. The second book it's titled Multiple Streams of Income. And the number one thing I got from that book, it's about 200 pages, it's important to have backup streams of income, much like insurance in these days, so that if one source of income falls down, you have multiple legs to sustain you. So my personal example, I have 10 sources of income, and last year, with when the pandemic hit, it took out one entire source of income, but I was okay because I had the other 9 sources to back that up. So and that book is less than $10. You can, and it'll protect your financial future. It'll save your life. And the interesting thing is, I sat in on some courses in the MBA program at Rice when I was a graduate student, because that was free and available to me, and that was great in terms of the networking and just in terms of the advanced concepts. But really, a lot of my education, I've never, it's fascinating to me. Financial literacy is not taught either in high school, college, or any level. So we have to go and either self-experience, or we have to get a coach, or ask other people. The beauty of it is that in today's age, you can go onto YouTube, you can go onto Spotify, any podcast, and there, you can get a great, great gems of wisdom and just, tons of experience. But I think it starts out with just, you have to self educate and invest in yourself. So, and that is there's no course or anything that, in the mainstream that's going to teach you. It's up to us to get our own financial education. So
And what are some qualified places to go get that? We do know that as adults in our adult careers that people learn on a need to know basis. So
uh,
we'll purchase a webinar, we'll buy a course.
uh,
We have a plentiful, virtual webinars, virtual courses that we can take, mastermind groups, which you can talk about as well.
uh,
But those are usually, I was telling my son just the other day, hey son, life rule. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
yes.
And, I was explaining that, from a school lunch perspective, but also, a learning perspective, making it a teachable moment to say, hey, when you get older, see, people are going to say, let me buy you lunch. And there's always, unless it's usually grandma or grandpa or mom and dad taking you out for lunch,
uh,
there's usually a reason for it. So what are some of your resources for that? And you're welcome to list off links, and please tell us how doctors can get connected with you. Because 10 sources of income, only losing one in a pandemic, that is pretty darn good.
yeah. And the reason why was because, back in 2000 I started this, pre 2000, it was great for everybody. It was almost like the best times. Nothing bad could happen. But after 2000, you started to see, 9/11, and then 2008, and all these different, crises. So so I really started to really prepare from, the future in terms of just livelihood and viability. So I mean, you can email me at Christopher Liu MD PhD for any sources of, advice. My link tree, I'm on Linktree at Dr. Chris Liu MD PhD, and you can see all of my resources there. But really, I think, like I said, I really got into, self-improvement, self-development, and education early on. And it was just because I saw that what we were learning in school wasn't really applicable to real life, apart from, training for a profession or a skill, or, job or occupation. So it really didn't prepare you for the real world. From there, there's I think the number one thing is to build a solid network. So you're always learning, you always have resources with people, you're always connecting with people, asking questions, giving, thoughtful answers, and it's an exchange. So and that's been a really good source, because then you can turn to different people with different opinions and ideas. But really, it takes just a self-knowledge and education. You have to take that initiative, invest 1 or 2 hours per day in learning something new outside of your field, and that'll take you a long way as well.
Absolutely. One of the pieces of advice that we actually hear from quite a bit, that from doctors, and we give as well, and promote to doctors, is a better tomorrow starts tonight. So before you go to bed, have a little notebook or a Post-it pad, and make a list of the things you need to get done in the morning, or you need to get done tomorrow. And maybe it's 2 things, maybe it's 5 things, and you just write them down with a little pen or pencil next to your nightstand. And it's like, I got to get these things done. Make sure that starts tomorrow. It's the goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. And,
Uh-huh.
moving that needle forward, like, what, I need to get that book. This is a great time, being earlier in the year, but any time is a good time. We find that September is the new January as well,
Uh-huh.
with school starting every year in the fall, that, families are kind of hitting the reset button, almost going on diets to prepare for, the holidays, and they're entertaining and seeing loved ones. So it's like, I'm going to buy some Audible books. I'm going to listen to some books. I'm going to start reading. I'm going to start going to these networking groups.
Uh-huh.
And it can be tough to know, who to trust and which road to go down.
Uh-huh.
And so, what would be a first couple of steps for physicians? Listening health, and again, this might not be just for physicians. Are you also seeing PAs, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, RNs? Are you seeing them, you know, diversify their, I guess you could say, portfolio, so to speak, of revenue, so that they also have places to fall back on as well? Are you helping and seeing, having those conversations?
Mm. Um, One thing you mentioned what that was interesting was with nurse practitioners and PAs. I'm actually seeing a lot more interest in terms of the mid levels, and a number of individuals going into that field. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One is because one is the time frame for education and training is much shorter, so they're getting out in before their 30s. They have probably 5 to 6 really solid earning years, so they can start investing that amount earlier. And then the other thing is just, I think, just the amount of hours in the training, and just the student loan debt and the stress with being a physician is making people second guess or think of different careers, or if there's different alternative better ways to making an impact. So that's one thing. uh for the general population, there's a great quote where it just says, and some people subscribe to it and some people don't, but it's called hashtag live like a resident. And is
Hmm.
essentially, regardless of how much money you make, if you keep your expenses low, you'll do that much better. So you don't have to live a very frugal lifestyle, but it's just where you're just very cost conscious about each and every expense. And so that way your expense doesn't creep up to untackleable levels.
And
So
our guest today is Dr. Christopher Liu. We're going to put the links to your link tree, your websites, your emails, so that those listening and watching can learn and connect with you directly when they have questions about resources, books, those types of things, because that is important. And one of the things that I even heard, in reference to, for the older demographic watching and listening and learning is, I think it was Clark Howard. He's a consumer advisor. He's not a physician, but I think he's a
uh,
consumer advisor. You familiar with who he is?
I know
Clark Howard. So I think it's clark.com, but he was talking about what's necessary for retirement. And I think he went with the 4% rule.
Mhm.
And that was just, less than an hour or two ago on our Atlanta based radio, and talking about, let's look at how you can live off 4% of what you are currently, uh, you will go through 4% of your savings, or when you retire. So you have no more lines of revenue coming in,
Uh-huh.
that you are going to eat up essentially 4% of what you have saved. Let's say you don't earn any more, you don't earn $1 more, you will try to live off of that 4%, not in a meager way, because hopefully you've done well in life.
Mhm.
And that also jumps on, and I know I'm kind of lily pad jumping here, but I also want to speak to the idea of, and I think that this is something that when I've talked with medical professors who are teaching young residents, teaching the future of our medical care providers out there is, why is it that, and this is a tough question, and I know it might cause attention for some of those listening, and it might be like, thanks for asking that. But I think we need your honest opinion on this one. Why is it that, young folks in particular who are coming out of school, medical school, are taught that making no money as a healthcare provider, as a physician, is a badge of honor? I'm going to let you jump on that. That's a big, important, hairy bear, to talk about, because, the benevolence and the giving spirit of a physician is incredible. I've met so many incredible physicians over the years, and their hearts and their heartbeats to help people are so great, but then they're not rewarded for it. And I understand, you're not going into medicine to make a ton of money, but you do have to live. And, with the burnout increasing among a lot of provider sets, we got to do something. We got to incentivize doctors, nurses, PAs, et cetera, to come into these fields, because without them, our communities, the pandemic proved that our communities need them. So I'm going to let you tackle that one.
I think I like that question, and it's a good question, and it's really important because I think the culture of medicine is still, like I said, medicine is a very slow growing profession. So a lot of the cultural social norms. So back then, you're expected to work 120 plus hours and never come home, never see your wife and kids, and that was a badge of honor, and you're supposed to take abuse, and that was sort of, it was a almost like a hazing ritual in a process. And if you made it, and once you made it, then you could it was sort of a rite of passage. And so that's one part of it. I think the other part of it is that like I said, physicians, the culture is of medicine, you're guilted and you're shamed for talking about money or speaking about money, or asking for payment for your services. And so that's instilled and ingrained. Coupled with that, you don't have you have a lack of financial education and literacy among physicians and residents and within the institution. And then this sets the stage up for what happened last year. So, and then on top of that, you have evolving paradigms. So you have a system that's changed from a very stable, simple industrial age paradigm into something that's highly complex, rapidly changing, highly variable, highly dynamic information age paradigm. And now you're set with physicians just requiring different mindsets and skill sets. So I think some of the best skills for physicians to have today is one is the very sharp business mindset, and that's not only to protect them but also to help them prosper in their careers. So on top of that, a strong marketing skill set, a strong advertising and a business skill set will help the physicians survive, especially in terms of managing their personal finances, to managing their clinic, and to managing their career. Third is the fact that you have in the information age now, the healthcare business model has changed. So right now, insurance and these regulatory agencies control physicians, hospitals, and so really they're the ones calling the shots. So and then they, on top of that, they take advantage of the benevolence of physicians, and then what happens is that you have increased workload, you have increased burnout, you have decreased reimbursement, increasing malpractice, and that's a large part of why you're seeing a mass exodus of physicians currently.
And our guest today is Dr. Christopher Liu, and we're coming in for a landing on our first part of this series. And so our final question for you, Dr. Liu, as we conclude the first part of this series, and stay tuned for the second part of our series coming up with Dr. Liu. We're going to talk about the mindsets and skill sets required to be successful outside of medicine, but still keep one foot in the door, and the factors affecting exodus for a lot of different providers. And so, Dr. Christopher Liu, we're going to put all of your links above and below. So please reach out to Dr. Liu. He is here for you, and happy to help you and to talk with you. Maybe you're just at a crossroads where you need another peer with an objective perspective to say, here's my situation. Call up Dr. Liu and be like, here's my situation, and I'm just not sure what to do. I've got these, investment properties, and I'm not happy with them, or I want to get into something, but I don't know where to start, or man, I can't do this anymore, and I got to do something. And I'm so glad I stumbled upon this. So what do you want doctors to think, feel, and do before our next series?
Well, I think the big takeaway from today's talk is is all about financial resiliency and financial fitness. So that all starts with just financial education. So if I planted the seeds, either you need to do something different or start or find new resources. My main motivation today was to inspire, motivate, and to plant seeds for your future financial pathway.
Absolutely. And planting those seeds is such an important part of taking the next steps and putting handles on what we've talked about here. Our guest today has been Dr. Christopher Liu. We're going to come in for our second part of our series, so please stay tuned for that here in the next few hours or days. And we're definitely want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise and what you're doing for doctors. We say a lot around here, it's not about being the best doctor in the world any longer. And that doesn't mean inside of the exam room. It doesn't mean inside of your clinical practice. It could also be out and about in your community, speaking from stage, writing an op-ed piece for your local newspaper. Yes, people still do read those, or blog, whatever. But it's about being the best not about being the best doctor in the world any longer. It's about being the best doctor for the world, for your community, and if you have them, for your patients. And I'll add one more, for your family and for yourself. So thanks, Dr. Christopher Liu. We look forward to catching up with you in part 2.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate our time together.
You want to change your practice. You want more patients. You want to leave an office environment at the end of the day feeling like this is a really great place to work. It's a place that they want to come back to again and again. So here at Concierge Medicine Today, in the Concierge Medicine Forum, we're bringing you a new course called a Masterclass in Interior Design. We're going to talk with 2 healthcare interior designers who understand the psychology of furnishing and paint color and design and the hard work that goes into creating an irresistible healthcare environment. And yes, it is possible on a limited budget too. Go to 4doctorsforum.org or Concierge Medicine Today.
When the world breaks, you stand tall. When you feel pain,